Hey everyone, welcome to the Canine Culture Podcast, where we talk about everything dog. Q&As with veterinarian professionals, rescue operators, everyday topics. We cover everything dog on this podcast. So make sure you subscribe to the Canine Culture Podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and make sure you're following us on social media on both Instagram and Facebook. Thanks again for listening. Now here's that next episode. Hey everyone, welcome to the Canine Culture Podcast. This is your host, Brittany, and today we're talking about hot dogs, and not the hot dogs you're thinking of. It's almost summertime, and so this is the perfect time to start talking about keeping your dog protected, keeping them cool, and preventing heat stroke. And I know you're already thinking it. My dog won't experience a heat stroke. That's so rare. That doesn't happen that often. Unfortunately, it happens much more often than what you would think. So, especially here in Florida, dogs can overheat whether they are on a walk. You know, if you leave them in the car just to run in and get coffee, and let's say you even have the windows down, there's a number of scenarios that people don't necessarily think about where your dog could get too hot or they could just be at risk. And so I think it's important to think about heat stroke in dogs, acknowledge that it can happen. Also thinking about the vulnerability of dogs. And so oftentimes you'll hear people say, well, I'm not too hot, or I would be fine with the windows down. Dogs cannot sweat, so their body temperature regulation is a little bit different than ours. Many dogs have thick fur coats, and so that kind of adds to the heat or trapping that heat. You also have to think about the breed. So some breeds with a shorter nose are a little more susceptible to having issues related to heat. And so, like I was saying, some of those common scenarios are leaving them in the car, going on a walk, maybe even just playing in the backyard. Camping, that's another one if you were camping this summer. So before we talk about how to prevent it, let's talk about some of the symptoms. Symptoms and signs of heat stroke, and there are quite a few, and these could dabble into some other areas, but what you're looking for is excessive panting or drooling. If your dog gets very lethargic, if they get kind of confused, maybe they start to, stumble around a bit or appear to just be different. If there's vomiting or diarrhea, if you look at their gums, if their gums or their tongue are bright red, if they collapse, if they have a seizure, it's important that if you see these symptoms, especially, if it's hot outside, maybe you see more than one, it's important to act quickly. So you're going to want to move your dog to the shade. You want to offer them cool, but not cold water. You don't want to move too quickly with trying to counteract that heat. Maybe putting wet towels along their neck, along their paws. Again, not ice cold, but cool towels. And of course, getting to the vet as quick as possible, especially if they have collapsed or had a seizure, because there could be a lot of long-term effects from a heat stroke. So there could be organ damage, it could be liver damage, kidney damage, the brain, another of other issues that could come up long-term. And so that's why acting quickly is so important. And quite frankly, just preventing it altogether. So let's talk about prevention. Number one, don't leave your dogs in a car, even if the windows are down. And okay, maybe it's different in the winter, the fall, but in the summer, the car heats up so much. Think about if you just sat in there without the car on with just cracks in the window. Think about how hot that gets, how quickly that can get hot. If you're taking your dogs on walks, trying to walk them earlier in the morning, later in the evening. So we're not trying to walk them between, 11 a.m. and like 3 or 4 p.m. We don't want it to be at that highest heat of the day. You also run the risk then too of your dog possibly injuring the pads of their feet. So they can actually burn their feet on hot pavement, hot asphalt, whatever it might be. So that's something else to think about as well. I'm trying to provide your dog with shade and cool water. So let's say you are, at a family barbecue. you're on a camping trip, whatever it might be, making sure your dog has access to shade that's kind of open so there could be some airflow, and then making sure they have constant access to cool water. Some other options are like cooling mats. A few years ago, we actually got a cooling mat at Aldi. I don't know if they still release those in the summer, but our dogs love it. Year round, it's just sitting in our bedroom and they love to sleep on it because it has like a gel material that's really cool. They have them everywhere. So I've seen cooling mats on Amazon, at Walmart, Target, PetSmart. There's so many places, and there's a wide variety of prices, different styles, different shapes, different sizes. So there are cooling mats. There's also cooling vests, and I've never tried one of those. I've seen a few people put their dogs in a cooling vest, and I think that might just be preference. Some dogs don't want to wear clothes, and so they might not be receptive to having a cooling vest. Think about making little frozen treats. So, if we're going to hang out on the patio for a little bit, we might make little frozen treats that have like blueberries or some kind of safe fruit in there. And not only are they keeping cool, kind of eating that while they're outside, but it's also like an enrichment, something that they enjoy. Making sure you keep your dog groomed in the summer. That's another big component, especially if your dog has an undercoat, making sure you're really brushing that, getting all of that extra hair. You don't want that extra hair to, trap in some of that heat. And then if you want to kind of think about your home and preparing your home for the summer, making sure you keep your dog cool, again, setting up different cool zones, especially if you have a lot of natural light and a lot of sun coming in. You might just want to make sure your dog has a shaded area where they're comfortable to kind of hang out during the day. I know my dogs choose to still lay in the sun, but they do have plenty of options if they want to get out of the sun. If you do have a patio or porch or backyard, getting like a little kiddie pool that your dog can lay in, play in, whatever it might be. I also got that at Aldi. Aldi, if you're listening, feel free to sponsor a girl. But we have a little one from Aldi that was a really good price when we got it, maybe 2 years ago. But just like a cheap little plastic pool. If you've got maybe some outdoor fans that you can kind of just keeping that circulation, even like in the garage or outside. And then checking hot surfaces. So again, trying to make sure you're preventing their little pads from being burnt. Now, let's think about what not to do if you think your dog is having a heat stroke or if they're just overheated in general. So you don't want to give them ice cold water and you do not want to put them in an ice bath. Trying to cool your dog too quickly can cause the blood vessels to constrict and can trap heat inside and can lead to shock. So you do not want it to be icy cold, whether it's something you're putting on them, something you're putting them in, or a drink. You want it to be cool, not icy cold. Don't force them to drink. So if they are alert, let them drink on their own. If you have a dog that's confused, maybe they've passed out or they've had a seizure, trying to force water down their throat could cause them to choke, could cause them to aspirate. You want to be really careful there. So while you can encourage it, you're not forcing them to drink. And then don't leave them unattended. So, we're not leaving them outside all day long on these summer days. Like I've said multiple times, but I just want to make sure it resonates. You're not leaving them in a car. If you have to run errands, they're probably better at home. They'd probably prefer to stay at home, sleep in their bed, sleep on the couch, whatever that might be. It's going to be more comfortable for them. And then don't assume that they're okay. So if you do have one of these big instances come up, you've got multiple symptoms, you might still want to go to a vet just because, like I said earlier, heat stroke can cause internal organ damage. So better safe than sorry seeing your vet for something like this. So, if you are going on a summer vacation and you have a dog sitter, maybe think about leaving a note with what vet your dog is established at, what ER you might prefer. And even if you don't have a preferred ER, just having that written down with the address and the phone number so that in that moment of chaos, your dog sitter has one less thing to think about, trying to Google while also trying to call you. If you kind of have everything ready for them, they're able to make that call or jump in the car, head that way. And so just making sure that if you have a sitter, you're also setting them up for success. So Would love to hear from any of you on, if you have experienced one of your dogs, a friend's dog, a family member's dog going through a heat stroke. What did that look like? What remedial measures did you take? Or if you just generally have tips, would love to hear that. So please feel free. When you see this episode come out, you can comment, or feel free to find us on social media, comment there. But as always, just want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in. The best way to support the Canine Culture Podcast is to like, subscribe, and follow. So thank you for listening, and talk to you guys soon. Thank you for tuning in to the Canine Culture Podcast. Please make sure you subscribe to the Canine Culture Podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and make sure you're following us on social media. If you have any recommendations, any topics that you'd like to hear, if you know of any guests that would be good for the show, or if you yourself want to be a guest, please reach out to us. Send us an email at canineculturepodcast@gmail.com, or send us a direct message on social media. Thank you for listening, and please share this with any of your dog-loving friends.